We're on page 34 tonight as we talk about Ecclesiastes. This is another writing of Solomon. Would somebody read that paragraph at the top of your page there? Okay, this is the last book that she just read there. He wrote this in his old age. This is his last book that he wrote, and we'll give you some general thoughts here. Let's just start there under general thoughts. While Proverbs is wisdom explained, Ecclesiastes is wisdom experienced. This is about his life and what he experienced. Um, it's it's not just wisdom explained; it's wisdom experienced. Secondly, it is a book of struggle. It's a book of struggle. It's got heartache, frustration from an older king, literally, who went in a foolish direction. And even though he had great wisdom, he went in a foolish direction. And he uses the key word is meaningless. I think it's used like 34 times, but it's meaningless. And then it's a story of Solomon trying to find purpose apart from God. So this is not a good thing for Solomon. He didn't seek God. He fell away from God, and he's trying to find purpose somehow apart from God. So there are three repeating phrases in this. The first one, as you would guess, is life is meaningless. Life is meaningless. And Ecclesiastes 1 2, he says, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do you think when you hear that?
Depression.
About said the same time
Depressing?
you did.
Depressing.
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 Like
Depression.
they're depressed when they think that. I don't know. That's just one.
Very depressing, yeah. Very.
Is it true?
Life is meaningless. It seems
There are parts of life that are meaningless in the grand scheme of things. I feel like
What
meaning.
what part would be meaningless? Do you think?
seem to see everything earthly because it all passes through. I mean, said the earth stays here, but we come and go. So that's our point.
We get a new body when we get to heaven, right? Which is a really good thing on my part. But, so you don't want to put money into your body, right? I mean, you don't want to look like Kenny Rogers when you die. It's like that money that's meaningless. So, um, and what you buy,
Yeah, our material things really.
all the material
in the
things
big-
are really meaningless. They don't add up to anything. You know, that I remember every time I think about Solomon, I think about that one. It's not really a poem, but it goes like, you can buy a nice bed, but you can't get a good night's sleep. You can, how that goes. You can have all the nice
Isn't
things,
that-
but
Isn't that in there? He
You can
talks
have the-
about
yeah, it's in there in different places. You can have all the best medicine. That doesn't mean you feel good. Um, you can have all kinds of things, but that doesn't. The things that really make you happy, the things that are worthwhile, the things that are eternal, anything other than that is meaningless. But here's a guy who tries to fulfill his heart. He tries to find joy. He tries to find pleasure. He tries to find um, something worthwhile in this life, and he can't do it. So he says it's meaningless. So that's the first repeating phrase. The second one is there's nothing new under the sun. And where life is meaningless is used 34 times. Nothing new under the sun is used 29 times. It's it is kind of amazing how um, there really isn't much new. Not really. I mean, we I mean, people think about technology and stuff today and all the breakthroughs and the advances they're having in technology, but as far as people goes, as far as other things go in the world, it's there's really not anything new. You know, people have been evil in the past; they've been good in the past.
Humans are humans, right?
They are, they are, Karen, exactly right. It's just, um, my best inventions I've ever had, somebody else has already done it. You know, there's nothing new. You ever think, nobody's ever thought this before, and then it's like, oh yeah, they did, like 3,000 years ago or something. It's like there's nothing really new at all. Everything's been thought of, everything's been done, and nothing's really new. The third phrase is a chasing after the wind. Chasing after the wind. That's used 7 times. I've never lived any place that's as windy as this place. Man, it is windy today, just insane windy. And that's what he says. It's like chasing after the wind. There's not much use in doing that. You can't see where it's going or where it's coming from, and it's pretty much futile. So it doesn't really matter too much. And those phrases are in chapter 1, verse 2, um, 2, and then verse 3. Verse 9 says, what has been will be again, and what's been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Verse 14, I've seen all things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, chasing after the wind. So verse 2 and verse 9 and verse 14 really give all 3 of those phrases there that we just talked about. Well, some basic facts about the book of Ecclesiastes. The author is Solomon. In the book, he is called teacher. And we learned about him. Solomon was given a lot of wisdom by God. Um, the recipients would be Israel, but particularly Solomon's son. So, and us, obviously, the date is about 930 BC. So this was in Solomon's older age. He probably would have been, scholars think he was probably about 75 when he did this. So I used to think 75 was just older in the hills, but it's really not very old, is it? I remember my mom and dad had their 25th wedding anniversary, and I thought, man, they got one foot in the grave, It's like, now that's nothing. But anyway, he was older, and the purpose is to show a man who tries it all and finds no meaning in life apart from God. He tries it all, but he doesn't find any meaning in life apart from God. And when you think about that, our hearts and our soul cannot be fulfilled by anything but God, and you just can't do it. You take the people that are very, very wealthy. What do they want? More money. I mean, what do they want? More money. It's true with every vice. You just can't get enough. You can never get high enough. You can never get, rich enough. You can never get popular enough. You can never get powerful enough. People that are caught up in those things, enough is never enough. Yeah, there's always got to be more. And Solomon was one of those people who definitely had a lot. We'll talk more about that later. But okay, the 2 views of 'Ecclesiastes. The first view is that Solomon was playing the devil's advocate. Um, and by that I mean, I think you know what that means. By that, what I mean is, it's just he didn't really think these things or believe them. He's just challenging the reader to think better. So he's that's one view. He's just playing the devil's advocate. He's just making stuff up. So he didn't really think these things. He's just trying to get people to think, you know. And sometimes people play the devil's advocate just to get people to think, you know. They'll stand up and they'll say, "I'm going to show you how not to do this," and everybody in the crowd wants to do it, and that gets their attention, causes them to think, and that's just a way of doing it. Secondly, this is the story of Solomon's life. That is the second view. It's the story of a man who's very frustrated because now he's old, and he's kind of left the Lord, so to speak. He's just following his own path, and he's trying to find purpose in life. And that's what I believe this book is. I don't think there's any question about that myself. But he certainly had the ability. He had the finances, had the power and position and everything. So it seems very likely that this was basically the story of his life. Any thoughts?
Same was, like you said, just an attention grab, kind of just to say things that were, scary, like life is meaningless and all this and that, to kind of get you.
Get you thinking. Yep. Yep. Just being the devil's advocate, trying to bring out the worst to get you to think about your own life. Okay, introduction. An introduction is kind of an overview, and I guess that's what you could write there. And that's really verses 1 through 11. Um, and I'd like for somebody to read, well, it's 1 through 11, but um, the next section is really what I prefer to read. But let's go ahead and read. Why don't somebody go ahead and read 1 through 11, and then we'll read the next section after that. 1 to 11, someone.
Words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors, at which they toil under the sun? Generations coming, generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets, and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, "Look, this is something new"? It was here already, long ago. It was here before our time. No one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them.
Okay. Anything jump out at you as you read through that?
Cycles,
Yeah.
the ocean, the streams. Nothing new under the sun. Sunrises.
Nobody's really remembered. Few people are, right? You go by these graveyards that are really old and nobody's mowing them anymore, you know? Nobody even knows who's out there. It don't take long, does it? I mean, So when you think about life being meaningless, it's like, you know, and I often say that sometimes when I have a sermon for a funeral, I'll say, you know, I can't in just a few minutes say everything that's happened in the last 80 years. I mean, good heavens. You think about how much a person does in their life and all the things they experience and everything. Um, it all adds up to a lot. And I've always thought, you know, we work generation after generation. We work and work our whole life to have more and more money. And, you know, and you should at the end of your life have enough money saved. You can pass it on to your kids and then they live their life and that, like that nest egg would just keep growing and growing and growing. Never does it? It's always going. I mean, by now we should all be multimillionaires, you know, all the, you know, I know my grandparents worked hard their entire life, you know, had a big farm and had a lot of employees actually on their farm, but you know, it was passed down. They passed away. My uncles and aunts got it. They spent it. You know, none of them left anything for me. So, you know, it's like, which is fine because I'm not leaving anything for my kids either. So, but you know, life's over. You would spend all your life doing everything, and when it comes down to it, what you do for God remains. And Jesus even said, if you just give a cup of cold water, you're going to be rewarded. You know, that's why I stand out by the water fountain and hot cups of cold. You know, it's like, but you know, you think about it. This is the words of Jesus saying, if you do something for somebody, that's what will be rewarded because it has an eternal significance to it. And you know, because we know Jesus, because we know that hell awaits those who don't know him, we have a responsibility. You know, we have the good news. We got the great news. And we got the life raft for people that are drowning. And if we see them drowning, we don't throw them the life raft. Say, grab a hold. Yeah, really, that's what it boils down to. So, um, what really makes a life count is what you do for Christ. And Solomon is what we're learning here is he didn't make his life count. So, all right, the second part is in your book, you can write, I've tried it all. So, would somebody read at least down to verse 2 or chapter 2, starting with 12 through 18?
Preacher had been king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have been everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me, and my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom, and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is but a striving after wind, for in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increaseth knowledge increases sorrow. Do I go further?
Pardon? Yeah, that's
That's
it.
it.
Yeah, and then in chapter 2, he goes on to say, I thought in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But this is meaningless. And then he starts going through saying all that he did, all the pleasures he sought. He tried cheering himself with wine. He started trying to fill his mind with wisdom. He wanted to see what was worthwhile. He says, would somebody read 4 through 9? Okay. And I mean, he goes on. I mean, you've read this, but he said he goes on. He he denied himself nothing his eyes desired. He refused no pleasure. I mean, this guy had the money to do it. He had the means to do it, the position to do it, and so he had tried it all. Literally everything he could possibly think of, he tried it all. And you got to remember that he's got a really a great mind too, because the scriptures tell us that he could name the birds, he could describe all kinds of things that you wouldn't know. You just couldn't possibly know if God didn't give that to you. So he was a man of great wisdom, and he used his knowledge to absolutely try everything that he could possibly try. Um, and he kind of concludes that with, it's not giving him no any satisfaction, even though he's tried it all. It doesn't um, look like anything really give him pleasure. Um, any thoughts? Your question?
He thinks he was
Probably.
more.
What do you do? What do you do?
He did say the more knowledge you gain, the more, what is it? More knowledge, the more grief. So,
Kind of reminds me of. I just thought of something that I read about Tom Brady. You guys know who Tom Brady is, right?
the only
The
football player I
winningest
know.
quarterback in NFL history, whatever. But he's achieved every accolade and every award and every monetary. He's got more money than his grandchildren would ever spend his money. All that. But he made a comment, something to the effect of, with all this stuff that there's got to be more, or something like that.
Yeah.
But to my knowledge, I don't know that he knows the Lord.
Yeah. That's what he's longing.
He's long.
Yeah.
That's absolutely. But
Yeah.
but he won't acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Or
Maybe
apparently, I don't want to misspeak because he may be, and I don't know. But yeah, that just popped into my head. Similar.
Yeah.
Well, he'll be speaking like Solomon in Ecclesiastes. So,
Yeah.
But
Well, everybody always thinks more money would be good.
then you spend
It,
Well,
if
when
you
don't have it, sure
if you-
would be.
it was several years ago now. My mom shared an article with me, and of this guy had tracked people that had won the lottery, and almost all of them, like it was in the 90%, had lost it all, and all of them, pretty much all of them, said they wished they'd never won it.
Yeah.
Because they found out their friends weren't their friends, and they found out that it really didn't satisfy their desires like they thought it would. Everybody thinks, yeah, I'd like to have a little bit more, or I can handle it. But as a Christian, I think if you have a lot of money, it comes with a lot more responsibility. And the people in the world don't feel that way. I mean, if you make a lot of money in the world today, what do? You buy rockets. You try to go to another planet. Yeah, what are you going to spend it on? I mean, if they want to go to another planet, go for it. I have enough trouble on this one. So, you know, although men are from Mars, so I guess we could go back, to our home ground. But
now follows Jupiter.
yeah,
Or is that just boys?
but it just doesn't satisfy you. But there's always that. I think in humanity, there's always that underlying drawing from our fallen nature that says, if I could just have that, or get a little bit more, but a little bit more is never enough, and it's kind of maddening in a way, because if you've ever been caught up in anything that like consumes you, it's never enough, and you get caught up in that. But what God has put in the heart of mankind is a longing to be with Him, Every culture has a God, and people just don't pay attention to God anymore. So, and Solomon was not paying attention to God. Well, the number three, he said, "I've seen it all. I've not only tried it all, I've seen it all." And he starts out chapter 3 about a time for everything. Remember, thinking it'll come to me in a second. The Birds. Remember that singing group?
Oh yeah.
They had a song about time.
To everything.
Turn. There's a season. Yeah, they probably got that
Good
from
song.
here.
Really good song.
Yeah, I'm sure they were. I'm sure that group was doing devotions one day, and
Yeah.
is it bringing back memories to you old people? What's that?
They probably it was 60s.
Do what? Wasn't in the 80s. Somebody look it up on your phone. Yeah, let's have somebody play it, or at least the first few notes of it. Time to love and something else. And you got to tell us what year it is. It had to be in the 60s, I would think. Birds is spelled like BYRDS. If it comes up Starling, you hit the wrong one. Yeah, there you go.
You got it? Crank it up.
Let's sing it for her.
There it is.
That's it.
Who's it by?
Who's it by?
The Birds.
The Birds.
It's a group.
What year was the song Turn?
That's what it's called.
65.
55.
60.
Oh. Yeah. They were doing their devotions one day, and they got to this passage. Hey, let's make a song out of it. All right. So he's seen it all. I mean, and that goes all the way through chapter 8, where he talks about many things. So he's seen it all. There's nothing he hasn't seen. There's nothing he hasn't observed. And he literally finds everything he's seen literally almost worthless. It's not worthwhile. So, and then number 4 is he said, "I've considered it all." After trying it and seeing it, now he sets back and says, "I considered it. I thought about it." After trying everything and watching everything, he found out that thinking about these things was just about as useless. Didn't really bring any pleasure. So he concludes that everything is meaningless and literally a chastening after the wind. And then number 5 is the conclusion of the matter. And basically what you can write down there, only 2 things matter: fearing God and obeying him. There's only 2 things that really matter. And that's the conclusion at the end.
Fearing God.
Yeah. And obeying him. And there's some people that believe that that last verses 9 through 14 of chapter 12 were added sometime later and not really part of his words, but can't really put a finger on that or say whether that's really true or not at all. So, okay, page 36. Time for everything. We really just talked about that. Uh, that we started out chapter 3 talking about that. Then the next one is eternity in the hearts of men, and we briefly talked about this a minute ago when I said that that there's a void there. And if you look at Ecclesiastes 3:11, said he has made everything beautiful in his time. He has also set eternity in the hearts of men. Yet they cannot fathom what God has done from beginning to end. You ever think about that? I think we think about the future, what heaven's like, what how glorious it's going to be, what heaven's going to be. I don't think, for us to even sit down and contemplate and think, you think about a person's life, or your own life, and you think what you were doing when you were a kid, or what you did, your first job, or, and it seems like it was another lifetime ago. You think, well, what did God do in the past? You ever think about that? I mean, what has he done for billions and trillions, never ending? What has he done? What
Before
has
he
he created?
created the earth, and
Yeah.
was, overseeing this.
And that just took him a week, so 6 days actually.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't even begin to fathom God, his mind. I mean, you think about how many millions of tons of hydrogen the sun burns every second. And he said, let there be light, created it. Just even begin to fathom who God is and what he's done.
Do you think it's possible that God has created other worlds?
I don't know.
That, I mean, he's sovereign. He doesn't have to tell us about it. He didn't have to, his word to
Yeah.
us. This is God's word to earthlings.
Yeah.
Human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be.
I would tell you, I would say no, simply based on the fact that he definitely put a size on heaven, which is 1,500 square miles, the city of heaven. But heaven itself is beyond that. But the city is 1,500 square miles each way, up and down and back and forth. And he talks about there being just 12 seats around the throne, one for each of the tribe of Israel. So it doesn't appear that there would ever be another time that God has done this. The Bible also talks about the fact that angels Peter says that angels longed to figure out what God was doing. They had no idea what he was doing when Christ came. I mean, they weren't privy to the information. You know what I'm talking about? That passage in Peter. So it doesn't appear that it's anything else has ever happened like that. But that doesn't. But we still don't have a clue what all God could have done. I mean, there could be a mountain range with mountains 1,000,000 miles high, right?
Yeah.
I mean, anything you can think of, it's easy for God to do. God,
Yeah.
you don't have to come from anybody.
We think of time and
Yeah. Well, everything we think of is involved in time and creation. Yeah, and he's outside of all that. Time actually doesn't exist, and for God, it's always in the present. Time's always in the present. So he knows the past from the future because he's always in the present. He created time for us. It was all created for us. Time's really relative, actually. You know the satellites that go around the Earth? They go at a different speed because speed changes time, and they have it's really very minute amounts, but every so often they have to reset the clocks on the satellites because they're going at a faster rate. They're not going at the same time we are. Einstein figured that out years ago. He said if you could get in a rocket and blast off from Earth and go at the speed of light and go to lunchtime, turn around and come back and land on the Earth, be gone one day, going for that speed of time, and scientists have since proved this, going for that speed just for one day, you'd come back, 18 years would be going by on Earth, but it'd only be one day for you. But God's light, right? And light travels 186,000 miles a second. And all that's hard. And the thing about light too, Christy and I know this guy. His name's Doug Corrigan. He's a doctor. In fact, I want to have him come here and speak some point. He wrote a book on. This guy's a genius. He worked for pharmaceutical companies for a long time till he figured out what was going on with them. Then NASA hired him. He worked for NASA. I don't know what he does now, but he wrote a book on light. And in this book, I ought to get copies. It's just a real thin. And he talks about light is the only constant in the universe. I'm getting off track here, but you'll get over it. He talks about light being the only continuous thing in the world and in the universe. And light is very, it's so different than anything else. If you, like, for example, if you're going down the road and you're in the back of a pickup truck and you're going 50 mile an hour, and you throw a baseball, and let's say you can throw a baseball 50 mile an hour, how fast would that baseball be going?
Cancel out.
Well, you're throwing it forward.
Oh, throwing it forward. Okay.
As you're going, would it be going 100, right? Because you're going 50, and you throw the ball, it's going 50, so that ball's going 100. If you turned around and threw it backwards at 50 mile an hour, wouldn't be going on any speed, would it? Light, the speed of light is 186,000 miles a second. If you were going 100,000 miles an hour and you shined a flashlight forward, that light beam would still go 186,000 miles a second. It would not speed up 1,000. And if you turned around and shined it the other way, it wouldn't slow down. It would still go. It's constant. Nothing changes it.
It's weird.
It's really weird. Scientists can't figure it out. But anyway, in this book, he writes about light. And he's got a saying that he says, he'll stop and he'll talk about a hummingbird and explain how a hummingbird flaps its wings, 200 times a second or 60 times a second or whatever. And he gets all done explaining all the intricacies of it. And he said, now, is that by design or by chance? Like Sigmund Freud would say, it's, evolution. And he does that with one thing after another. But you get to light and you can't alter light. I mean, you could go 1,000,000 miles an hour and shine a light the other way and it would still go 186,000 miles an hour. Either way you shined it. And it's like, it's almost like an ongoing miracle, right? You can't change it. So it's really, really incredible. It's called, is it the science of relativity? I think that's what that's called. But anyway, the time for everything, eternity in the hearts of man. So he set that in the hearts of men. You can't change that. You know that? You can't change that. You can ignore it, but you can't change it. And there's people that think there's not a God, that when you die, you're just dead, So you're really protoplasm waiting to be manure, at some point. I mean, that's it. And if you believe that, why wouldn't you steal and take and indulge? And if you think you're going to die, why not? enjoy life to the fullest here
Go
and
crazy.
try to, get everything you can get no matter what. But that's not what he did to man. Mankind has that eternal desire in hearts. The dead lion, that's in chapter 9, verse 4. And basically, what he says there, would somebody read that, 9:4?
Anyone who is among the living has hope. Even a live dog is better off than a dead lion.
You know what he means by that? It'll make sense to you once you hear it. Even a live dog is better than a dead lion. He's a lion. He's king, right? He's king of the jungle. And he's old now. And he's saying, basically, I'd rather be alive and be a dog than to be dead and be king. Makes no difference. But at least you're alive if you're a dog, which is something, because dogs were considered low, low in that society. The wife of your youth, and we'll talk more about this when we get into Song of Solomon. But he talks about wife of his youth, and what's really interesting about this? Would somebody read 9:9? Okay, so enjoy the days with your wife, which is really interesting. That word in the Greek is or in the Hebrew is singular. He's talking about one wife, and he's got 700. That's kind of interesting. But maybe he's looking back because his first wife, her name was Shulameth, and you'll meet her when we get to Song of Solomon. But she was kind of like his first love, and maybe he's thinking about her and the joy he had with her. Um, then he tried to, satisfy himself with 699 more plus his concubines, and that didn't work. And now, as he's old, he realizes that. I'm an answer for everything. And verse 10:19, would you read that, please? Someone? There you go. That's a prosperity preacher's key verse, right? Money's the answer for everything. Obviously, it's not. It's funny to read, but it's kind of sad if that's where a person's heart's at. So, um, and a lot of cults pick up on that, and that's how they promote the study of old age. That's 12:1 through 5. Let me read part of that and just kind of walk you through that, and you'll get the picture of as we go through this. And I don't really have much of anything for you to write in any of these, so which you probably figured out by now. But 12:1. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come, and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. I'll tell you what, the older I get, the more I realize from seeing other older people than me, it's not for a wimp. Getting old's not for the wimp. I mean, these people suffer. It's tough. It's not fun. It's embarrassing. It's difficult, and you find no pleasure in them. He says, before the sun and light and the moon and the stars grow back and the clouds return after the rain. Now he's talking about the fact there he can't really see anymore, right? He's having trouble seeing. The clouds return. I don't know, maybe he's got, what do you call them? Floaty things you get in your eyes? Cataracts. Maybe it's cataracts. Verse 3, when the keepers of the house tremble and strong men stoop, and when their grinders cease because they are few. Well, he's talking about, your body shakes. You kind of stoop over, as you get older. Your grinders cease because they're few. You can't chew anything. You don't have any teeth left, right?
Your grinders cease.
Yeah. And looking through the windows grow dim. It's harder to see. And when the doors of the street are closed and the sound of grinding fades, when men rise up at the sound of birds, but all their songs grow faint. Can't hear anymore, right?
So you're losing your senses.
Huh?
You're losing your senses.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. When men are afraid of heights and of the dangers in the streets, and when the almond tree blossoms, so you're afraid of heights, right? You're afraid you're going to fall down. You're scared of getting robbed. The almond tree blossoms. What's that mean? Your hair turns white. Right. And the grasshopper drags himself along, and desires no longer stirred. I mean, you have no sexual desire anymore. A man goes to his eternal home, and mourners go about the streets. They're mourning for him, and it's just basically. And then he talks down in verse 7, and dust returns to the ground. Your spirit returns to God who gave it to you. But as far as your body goes, and it's pretty clear he fears old age, right? I mean, that's what he fears. So, any thoughts on that? That's where he's at in his life. Some familiar ones. 7:10 talks about the good old days. I mean, that's what people talk about. Some people are stuck in the good old days, huh? Why were the old days better than these? It's not wise to ask such questions. I mean, you got to deal with reality, right? So that's the good old days, the 7:10. 10:1 talks about a fly in the ointment. That's a pretty common phrase, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Dead flies give perfume a bad smell. So a little folly outweighs wisdom and humor. 10:20 is about a little bird. He said, "Do not reveal the king even in your thoughts, or curse the rich in your bedroom, because a bird of the air may carry your words, and the bird in the wing may report what you say." There's always somebody listening. Now we got video cameras that do it, right? You can't get away with anything. And then 11:1 is cast your bread. He said, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for after many days you'll find it again." Life just gets older and older, tougher and tougher. That's Solomon in his old age. Too, it's a sad epitaph of what happens when you turn away from God. All right, next time we meet is Song of Songs, and at the end of this, on page 42, is a recipe for discipleship cake. I don't know why they call it discipleship cake. It's using some of the ingredients of the Song of Songs. This is supposed to give you a sexual desire, is what it's for. So if somebody wants to bring some to class, you want to hear a true story? This is a true story. Okay, Denny Miller writes this material. A good friend of mine. We're going to Turkey with him in a few weeks. He taught this class like 30 years ago, and one of the ladies brought. This was a young couples group. They just were young married couples, and it was like 8 out of 10 couples found out within a month or two they were pregnant. after this class of eating. They said that's just been like that's been a post in history, for
avoiding all those ingredients.
for their church. So that story has been retold 1,000 times at their church, but it really was true. It really happened. And they just, and one after another would come to class and say, "You guys aren't going to believe this. We're pregnant." It's like, that's pretty funny.
Oh my goodness.
Something in the water there.
So bring it. We'll see what happens. All right. That's
She said there must be something in the
that's
water.
why it's in here. Okay, because of what happened in the class.
Mayonnaise, come on.
Makes it moist.
Anyway, I'm going to give you a heads up. You don't have to make it, but if you want to, you can. And that's where we'll be next week on lesson 6. So just read the Song of Songs, Song of Solomon, as it's called. It's a. What was that?
So she should make him for jerk snacks and then we'll just see. Coming up, I bet you have right before next
I'm
week.
gonna have it for Sunday.
You didn't even have Solomon cake. You got your little sign.
All among us.
Oh,
Permit.
yeah.